Hello, and welcome to the third episode of the Media Magpie podcast. Now, this one in particular is going to be a very special episode for me in particular, because I'm going to be sort of talking about something that's a bit personal for me, and it's a bit of I'm going to be sharing something personal. But we are, in this episode, I mean me, I'm going to be talking about not just a single song, but an actual whole album. And now, the album in question that I'm going to be talking about is an album by a little band, maybe a small little, band called Silverchair, which they're an Aussie band, so go the Aussies, which is great. But yes, so I'm going to be talking about Freak Show, the album Freak Show by Silverchair. And I'm going to, later on during this episode, I'm going to be talking about sort of a, story that is related to this band. That is a bit personal for me, but it's my story, and I felt like it'd be good to share it. So, yeah. Anyway, to give you a little introduction to the band, Silverchair, for anyone who doesn't know. So, Silverchair, the band first started out in 1992. So, probably long before maybe some of you were even born who are listening to this podcast. They were around. And they are from Newcastle in New South Wales in Australia. New South Wales. Yes, go the NSW. We like to see it. And basically, they had their biggest breakthrough was in the mid-1994 after winning a national demo competition. So they won a national demo competition, which was amazing. So good on Silverchair. And their success over all of their albums, they had about 10 million album sales. So that's just a little introduction on them. If you haven't heard of Silverchair, how have you not heard of them? They've had 10 mil album sales. It's crazy. So they're not not well known. They're pretty well known. But again, depending on what music genre you listen to, I get it. You might not know who they are. They're sort of more in the rock sort of genre, but they do mix around with it, mess around with it. They do a bit of pop and some other sort of different styles over the years. They go from grunge. They do a bit of grunge and then a bit of orchestric and art rock. It's very interesting, which I'll delve more into at that point. But yeah, so they're definitely not, people have definitely heard of them. So this band isn't not well known. Unfortunately, they're not doing any more new music anymore. But that's what it is. A lot of bands, either an artist passes away or they just break up and move on, which makes sense. Anyway, so just to sort of explain more and the evolution of Silverchair's sound, which I was talking about, from the first two albums, which is more of a grunge type of, genre for the music, it transitions from grunge, as I said, in their first two albums, to orchestral and then art rock influences, as I said. And, the songwriting and singing of, what's his name? Oh my God. Daniel Johns, who's the lead singer, evolved steadily while the band had developed an increased element of complexity. So it was evolving, he was evolving, the whole band was evolving, and it was sort of evolving as they got more popular and popular and popular. They were sort of figuring out different sounds and how they sort of sounded and how they wanted to sound, really. They were figuring it out, right? They didn't want to sound a certain way. They wanted to sort of experiment, is the word I'm looking for. Experiment. But the first ever album that they released, which is definitely a classic album for Silverchair, was an album called Frog Stomp, which Frog Stomp took about 9 days for the three teenagers. So they were teenagers at the time that they were in this band, teenagers. But it took 9 days for them to release their debut album with the producer, which his name is called Caveman Shirley. So, and the way that they did this was the sessions were all tracked in a live room to capture the sounds band created in their live shows. So basically what the producer wanted to do is make sure that he could capture the sounds that they made when they were doing their live shows. He didn't want it to sound fake or like they were doing it for the album. He wanted to sound real and live, which makes sense, right? It makes pure sense. And the Caveman wanted the album to sound like Silverchair, raw and loud. As I was saying, raw and loud. That's what he wanted it to sound like. And blimey me, it sounded raw and loud. I loved it. Honestly, I love Silverchair. To this day, I don't listen to them as much anymore, but I go back, and for this podcast, I had to go back. I went back and listened to the shit out of all Silverchair songs. A couple from Frog Stomp, a couple from Freak Show, and a couple from other albums that I can't think off the top of my head for some odd reason. I should know it, but I can't think of them. Anyway, so that's their first album. But to get into the next album, which I believe is their second album, if I'm correct, was Frog Stomp. No, not Frog Stomp, sorry. Freak Show. So Freak Show was released in 1997. So it's the second album. I am correct. It's the second album, which was released on the 4th of February, 1997. And it was actually nominated in 1997 for the RE Music Award for Best Group. But unfortunately it did lose to a band called Savage Garden, which is okay, but it was nominated. It was nominated for Best Group for the Music Awards. How cool is that? So they were clearly doing the works. They were getting nominated for stuff. They were finding themselves out, finding the groove, and they were just, working on their band. Anyway, so Silverchair began recording their second album, Freak Show, in May 1996, experiencing the success of their first album, their debut album. And as sort of Daniel Johns, which is the singer, the frontman, I guess you can call him, as he describes the album title in 1997, he compares it by the on-the-road, sort of lifestyle of Silverchair. And that's sort of what he compares to why this is what it's called, a freak show. And sort of why the album sort of cover is the way it looks. Which I'm going to get more into the reasoning behind said album cover and why he chose what he chose. So yeah, he was a on-the-road lifestyle of Silverchair to that of a traveling caravan. So saying they're like circus freaks and they're traveling, they're having a fun time, they're, performing, they're doing a big performance, right? And to get into the album cover, so the album cover image is an illustration of Gray Stills Jr., which I actually didn't know who this was, and this was news to me when I researched this. But Gray Stills Jr. is a sideshow performer who has the stage name Lobster Boy. Now, it's because of some sort of things that he has his hands that's related, so affiliated with I don't know how to pronounce that word. I'm sorry. But he's sort of got a condition that makes him have sort of these lobster-looking hands, and that was sort of the nickname that he got named by, right? Which is very interesting, and I didn't actually know that when doing the research for this podcast. I actually didn't know this as well, so this was news to me. It was very interesting. Very, very interesting. But, so that was very cool. And basically, the themes of the, of Freak Show in the songs, there was sort of underlying themes of disaster, suicide in the lyrics. Like, the names of the songs, right? I'll go for the list of the names. So this is the names of the songs from the album start to finish. You've got Slave, which Slave is an interesting song name. And it's a pretty good song too, You've got Freak, which I'll go into that one in detail. That was the first ever song, and I'll go into more detail. That was the first ever song I heard from Silverchair ever back in. I will explain that. That's coming up. That will be my story. And then there's also Abuse Me, which in the lyrics goes, "Come on, abuse me more, I like it." So it's like a song about, come on, keep talking because it's true. Talking about, it's abuse. And then there's one song which is called Lie to Me, which is 1 minute song that's going, just saying lie to me. Never gonna go, lie to me. And it just keeps going. And then they've got No Association, Cemetery, The Door, Pop Song for Us Rejects, Learn to Hate, Petrol and Chlorine, Roses, which I love Roses. I love all these ones. Nobody Came, and The Closing, which The Closing is a good one, and it's the last album of the song, The Closing, which I like. That's a good one. So there's a lot of interesting different titles for these songs, and the lyrics are very interesting too, which I could delve deeper into some of them if I really had the chance. I mean, for example, if I go Freak, which is one I will talk about a bit more. If we go to the lyrics of Freak, it says, your baby's got rabies sitting on a ball in the middle of the Andes. Yeah, I'm a freak of nature. Yeah, I'm a freak. If only I could be as cool as you. Body and soul, I'm a freak. I'm a freak. Body and soul, I'm a freak. I'm a freak. So it's basically a song of, like, he's trying to say is he feels different. He feels like he's a freak, he's an outlier. And again, I would say there's nothing wrong with that, Daniel. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. But it's an interesting song. And it's an interesting thing because people, during the time, and I must say, you know, there's times where I felt that I feel like I'm a freak too. You know, I feel like I'm a freak. I'm a weirdo. You know, what the hell am I doing here? That was another little song reference. But like, yeah, you know, everyone feels like a freak sometimes. And I feel like there's nothing wrong with feeling like a freak. It sounds weird, but I'm just saying being abnormal and being, I guess you could say, weird is a good thing. No one wants to be. I feel like people who feel like they're abnormal and freakish, that's just you, man. Just be who you want to be. Just be you. And that's fine. And if people don't accept you for who you are, then they can bugger off. They can just go off and hang out with friends who are normal, right? So I feel like everyone, you know, feels like they're a freak, but fuck it, who cares? So yeah. Anyway, so that's my take on the song, and that's why I sort of like it. Anyway, so there's a lot of different songs from the album. But one song in particular that I actually didn't know about is that there was actually a song that they were going to have for this album, which was called Slime, and it's an unreleased song. And it was recorded during the Freak Show sessions, but it was never released. It's never been released. So there's an unreleased song that was recorded but never released, which I didn't even know about until researching this. The existence of Slime can originally be traced back to 1996, late October, the European press tour, where it was listed among the rest of the Freak Show track listing. So it was listed there as a song that was going to be in the album, but it never got released. The song was described in the press release as similar to No Association, but more melatonin. But yeah, it was similar to Association. Anyway, I butchered that word, I think. But yes, it was described as, you know, like a linchpin of the entire album, which is interesting. But yeah, so going back to the album, Freak Show. Freak Show was, again, released, you know, 1997. But the album actually achieved significant success in Australia, making it reach #1 in the Australian charts. Like, how insane is that? It reached #1 in the Australian charts. That's insane. #1. #1 in the Australian charts during 1997. How fucking cool is that? So they were known. They were definitely well known. They were definitely not unknown. So, you know, they're definitely a band that set records and definitely knew and definitely made the ears of people. People liked what they were listening to. You know, it satisfied their ears. It definitely certainly satisfied my ears, you know. And going back to the hits from the album, you know, Cemetery, which was, as I said, one of their hits, that was third in the top 10 hits from the album. And then The Door, it reached a number of 25, still contributed to the album. And Freak, again, I would say, for me personally and for a lot of other people, it was a standout track that became one of Silverchair's signature songs that everyone loves. Everyone loves Freak. When you think of Silverchair, if you know them, you would think Freak. That's one of the songs. Or Suicidal Dreams, which is in Frog Stomp. But that's one of the songs you would think of instantly. You wouldn't mess about. That's what you would think. And in the United States, Freak Show was actually certified gold by the RIAA. And in Australia, it actually achieved 2 platinum certificates. So how fucking amazing is that? They literally got all that. They fucking nailed it. They knew what the fuck they were doing, and they got all that. But yeah, they killed it. And I mean, a lot of people enjoyed their music, probably as much as I did. But yeah, it was a good album, and I really liked their music. But yeah, so that was sort of what Silverchair is about, and that's sort of what Freak Show is about. But now, sort of to get into one of the reasons why I am talking about this said album is because there's sort of a story that's related to this album in regards to me. So, and I thought that this would sort of be a good time for me to share it. And most people that I know and love know this story and have already heard this story, but I feel I'm ready to let the world know. Let it out to the world. Share this story out to the world. And this is what I'm doing this episode for you today. Sharing it out to the world. So, and here it goes. So this is my story in regards to Silverchair. So it was year 9 or year 8 when I actually first heard the song Freak. As I mentioned, Freak was the first song I ever heard from Silverchair. One of my mates at the time during that informed me that something special was going to happen in music class. And then he said to prepare my ears for it, when it happens. And still to this day, and after that day, my ears have never been the same and never will be the same after hearing said music. Even just watching the video alone, because we watched the video for Freak Show, that was what we sort of had to do in music class, and then we sort of had to break it down and explain what it was about and what the messages conveyed and all that. I was so starstruck as I didn't really understand why they were playing music while they sort of had these heaters around them that was sort of with a guy in a hazmat suit, which was collecting their sweat while they were playing the drums and playing the guitar and singing while they were sweating with these massive ass heaters, like collecting their sweat, like they were creatures that were to be studied, and study their sweat. Which he was even looking at the sweat through the microscope and seeing all the atoms in the sweat or whatever. But again, it made sense for a song called Freak because he was trying to convey that they were seen as freaks. But something that I did not expect that would happen during year 9 was I would go through what probably a lot of teenagers, again, maybe went through during that time or have possibly gone through during that time. And not even just teenagers, but I would say a lot of adults have gone through this as well, was depression. Now, this was due to the fact that I had a lot of past struggles that were boxed up and never really explored during this time. And one of them was my feelings towards my parents' divorce, which sort of happened around near the end of primary school, around year 5, year 6 for me. And I sort of never really touched upon my emotions or really sort of opened up about them. I sort of wanted to make sure that my brother and sister, sister at the time, but were taken care of and that they were protected and that, nothing, that they were safe and they felt like they could talk to someone about it. But there was never really a time that I felt that I needed to talk about it or I needed to explore and I needed to think about it. I did the thing that I thought was right and took matters in my own hands and took care of my siblings, right? So it was never really explored for me. But again, that wasn't the only reason why the depression happened. It was because, as well, it was year 9. I was preparing for tests for every subject, and they weren't easy. They definitely weren't easy. And in the past, and still even probably now to this day, I've always really struggled with learning, with education. I was never really good at paying attention, focusing. I'd always play with my pencils, so I never really wanted to pay attention in class. It's never been a strong suit for me to pay attention. But in my experience of depression during year 9, it wasn't that I was mainly sad, or sort of, angry at the world for whatever the world took at me, or angry that I had these tests to do or whatever. I wasn't angry or sad. The way that I explain my depression to people is that I didn't feel anything during that time. And that there was a black hole sort of sucking everything in. That there was a black hole of nothingness in my heart. That it was just nothing. And I didn't feel any sort of emotion, really. It was just nothing. And the reason why Silverchair is related to this story is because it was the music that I sort of listened to during this time. This is the music I found during this time. So it's sort of, every time I think of Silverchair, it does relate back to that time. I can still remember parts of that time. There's bits and pieces that come through and they're not always there and they're not always happy or most of the time not always great. But one moment I do recall is when after school I was hanging out with schoolmates and a couple of other mates from another school, and we all went to a certain mate's place to chill and hang out. And in the background, while we're hanging out, was the song Suicidal Dream, which was from the album Frog Stomp, their first album. And I just remember swaying left to right in the chair while singing that song, which I actually found recently that I found on my Snapchat. I found that exact video that I'm mentioning on my Snapchat, which I can't believe I still have. But again, it wasn't really a great song to have during that time to get those thoughts in my head, but I'm still clearly here, so I stayed strong. As much as I have had those thoughts in the past, I want to state that I never have harmed or plan to harm myself. And I never, because as I always remind myself that if I did harm myself, not only would I be hurting myself, of course, but I will be hurting other people around me, including my family, friends, and possibly people I don't even know. I don't know who this would affect. And something that I will say to a lot of people is that don't end your life. It's not the end. It's not the solution to your problems. As a good person where I heard this one said that killing yourself is a permanent solution to temporary problems. They're just temporary. You just need to work through them and maybe even just talk to someone. Talk to someone and, figure it out, or just let your emotions out, whatever way you do it. But don't end your life. That is not the way to fix it. That is no way in heaven the way to fix it. But yeah, I'll never end my life, as I said. But yeah, going back to that, in relation to the people I have, is that something I also do remember a lot of during that time was there was always, there was always this one mate that knew there was something off about me. Now look, I as much as I talk here a lot, I didn't talk a lot in high school. I wasn't very chatty. I wasn't very open about being myself. I wasn't open, expressive about myself the way I am today, right? So it was sort of easy to hide my pain and hide how I was feeling. But this one mate, he sort of looked at me and he read me like a bloody book. He read me like a book and he knew that something was wrong. He knew that something wasn't right. And he kept asking me, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? Every single day. But I said to him, I am fine. I'm fine. You don't have to worry about me. I'm all good. I'm fine. And look, he didn't push. He didn't push at all. He didn't push to make me express how I'm feeling or sort of, push me to release my emotions. All he said was, well, I'm here for you if you need to talk to someone. I'm here for you. And still to this day, he is one of, if not, my best mate in the entire world. So I'm so lucky to have him in my life, as he is a legend. And I mean an absolute legend in my life. Like, I'm so happy to have him, He was the only one that knew, out of all my friends, he was the only one that knew that something was not right and that I was going through a tough time. And he was the only one that, cared. And, well, look, again, they didn't know. They didn't say anything. I put on a fake smile and it fooled them. It fooled them, but it didn't fool him. And he read me and he knew that something wasn't right and he had to pursue that. So, again, I gotta say, thank you, Will, for being in my life and for being one of the greatest people in my life. You're a legend. You're an absolute legend. You're an absolute bloody legend. And going back to the music of Silverchair that I was listening to, going back and listening to it now, it does bring back those memories during that time. But, I don't look at them as bad times, necessarily. I sort of look at them as times that I had to go through and sort of work on myself and figure out myself and sort of, I guess attack those problems that I'd been boxing up and never exploring. And it's good that I went through it. I'm happy I went through that experience. And I did. And in my own way, listening to Silverchair kept me sane. In a weird sort of way, it did. But it also, in a way, let me know that other people can feel the same way that I feel and that I wasn't alone. Because as in the song, I'm a freak of nature. In the song Freak, he felt like he was a freak. It let me know that I wasn't the only one to feel like a freak. And I can still remember the day that my 1-year depression was finally over. Oh my God, I can still remember this day. Like, I can remember this day like it was yesterday. I can picture it in my head. But I remember I was on the train going home from school, listening to music, and then it hit me. It hit me. I felt something. And I mean, When I say my depression happened, while during that time, I was a black hole, right? I never felt anything. My heart was just nothingness, like a black hole. Once you get sucked in, nothing. But when I was on this train going home, I felt something. And I burst into tears and tears, not understanding this feeling that I had. And I hadn't felt this way in a long time. So I didn't understand what was happening. I was crying. I didn't know what to say and what this feeling was. But after sort of having that experience, I figured out that it meant that I had recovered. Not fully recovered. I still had a lot to go through and still a lot to figure out, but enough to sort of feel again and sort of feel that, I was in a better place than I was during that past year. And as hard as that time was that I went through, I came out stronger than ever. And as I would say again, and as I'm going to say, if I ever had a time traveling machine to go back and change any moment of that, I wouldn't change it all. I'd let myself go through that again. If someone told me, would you go back and change any single moment of that pain? I wouldn't. I would not one single bit of it. I would keep it exactly the way it is, because it has led to my life right here, right now. I wouldn't change any part of it, because I've learned a lot about myself due to that experience. So it is a part of me and is who I am, and that's good. It's a good thing. But yeah, so that's sort of my story in relation to Silverchair. And every time I listen to their music, I, think about those moments. But I don't dwell on them. I look at them as moments that I've come out and become stronger and they sort of have shaped who the man I am today. So I'm happy again for those moments, and I would never change one single bit of it. But I think I'm gonna have to end the episode here. So thank you all of you for listening or watching. This has been the third episode of the Media Magpie podcast. And I hope you all enjoyed the episode. So thank you for tuning in, and I hope you pop on for the next one. Okay, thank you. Bye.